pray with me and for me at this time. Most gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts gathered here be acceptable in your sight, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Sometime back in July, I saw something, or I heard something, or I thought of something that I wanted to share with you in a sermon. So in order to remember this thing that I saw, or that I heard, or that I thought of that I wanted to share with you, I made myself a little note in my work calendar, and I wrote that note on a date where I didn't already have a plan for a sermon. On the square in my calendar, that is Sunday, August the 28th, today, I wrote living water. That was my note to myself, living water. Just that, nothing else. I was going to share with you today something that I saw, or something that I heard, or something that I thought about that caused me to think of living water. Now, I have looked at that note to myself several times since I wrote it down in July. I have gone through my calendar many times to schedule meetings and to schedule appointments and even to plan other worship services. And as I've gone through my calendar, I have looked at those words, living water, multiple times. But I gotta tell you, I do not remember why I wrote them in my calendar. I cannot recall what I saw, or what I heard, or what I thought about in July that I was planning to tell you about this morning. As a result, I did consider for a few moments scrapping the whole living water idea today and just, start over with something from scratch. But living water is such a spiritually sound concept. For that reason, I decided we might as well give in, right? We might as well go ahead and dig in and see what we can come up with this morning, even though I have no idea and I cannot remember what I saw or what I heard or what I thought about that I was going to share with you today. In one of my favorite Mary Oliver poems, she expresses the following thought about water that lives. She writes, "Some things, say the wise ones who know everything, are not living. I say, you live your life your way and leave me alone. About cows and starfish and roses, there is no argument. They die after all. But water is a question. So many things live in it. But what is it itself? Living or not? Oh, gleaming generosity. How can they write you out? Water is exceedingly generous to us. Sadly, we don't always reciprocate that generosity. We are very careless with water's generosity to us. We use it unsparingly as though it is a commodity for us to sell, and we hold all the stock options. In fact, we have made water a commodity, which is something that indigenous peoples cannot understand about white people. We sell it, we buy it, and we use it up. We refuse to take seriously the depleting water table or the havoc it will wreak on future generations. We also douse this precious resource with toxic chemicals to our own detriment and the detriment of every living creature on earth. And we have filled our oceans and our rivers and our lakes with so much plastic that it is now part of the water cycle. Microplastics are absorbed out of the oceans, filtered through the air, and come back down on the earth in rain. Plastic rain, they call it, and it is a danger to life. We've done that to this planet we're supposed to take care of. We have done that to the earth's supply of water, this gleaming generosity, as Mary Oliver has named it. Water is indeed a generous giver. It's generous by nature and all that it offers us. And it is also a generous gift. It's a gift of God intended to nurture and sustain all living beings. Without water, we die, which makes our neglect of this generous and yet limited resource all the more insidious. And its necessity to life also makes water a profound image for the divine-human relationship. Without the eternal spring of divine presence, we die. Among the words that Jesus spoke from the cross, John's Gospel records Jesus' cry, "I thirst. I thirst." That cry reminds us of Jesus' physical suffering. He was fully human, a human man in a human body. And as such, after horrific torture, after he was forced to drag his cross through the streets of Jerusalem, after he was nailed to that cross and left to suffocate, his physical form suffered with excruciating pain and exhaustion and dehydration. So he cried out, "I thirst." But his cry for water, his cry of thirst, also echoes the cry of the human soul that longs for union with God, the spring of living water that is our source and our sustenance. In his dying, Jesus longed for the presence of God. The Psalms make use of that imagery multiple times. In Psalm 63, the poet writes, "O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My body longs for you in a dry and weary land where there is no water." In Psalm 143, the psalmist prays, "I spread out my hands to you. My soul thirsts for you like a parched land." And in the beautiful song that the choir just sang for us, we hear the words of Psalm 42. "As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God." In our call to worship this morning from the 4th chapter of John, we read together the story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman. This woman came upon Jesus as he sat by the well from which she planned to draw water. The whole story floats on the metaphor of God as the eternal spring pouring out and into humanity. Jesus asked the woman for a drink of water to slake his thirst and refresh his body, and then he offered to her a spring of water to satisfy her soul and renew her life. I recently read this very cut and dry article that warned against spiritualizing the Gospel of John. But John's gospel is deeply spiritual, so it's difficult for me not to come to this text looking for the spirituality of Jesus. The story of the woman at the well is beautifully symbolic of a spiritual journey accompanied by Christ. We meet him sitting at the well that is the eternal spring of divine presence. He waits for us there. He waits for us beside the deep waters of God, where he himself comes for refreshment. If we agree to participate with Jesus in the living presence of God, if we offer to him what is ours to give, the resources that we are able to pull up in our own bucket, then we receive with him that long, lasting drink of eternal water that we can't live without, that water we all crave. Jesus offers us a way of being in relationship with God that sustains our whole life. And not only that, this holy water that he pours into our vessel strengthens our relationship with each other. It satiates our self-possessed desires so that it draws us up out of ourselves in order that we can enter with our whole heart into the community of humanity, where we are called to love and to serve without reservation. John's gospel continues this theme of living water in the passage that I read just a few moments ago from the 7th chapter. And I've chosen to read a translation this morning that I think does a good deal of honor to the original Greek of the passage. So hear it again, if you will. On the last day of the festival, the great day, while Jesus was standing there, he cried out, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me, and let the one who believes in me drink. As the scripture has said, out of the belly flows rivers of living water." At this point in John's gospel, Jesus is in Jerusalem to celebrate the festival of booths, the harvest festival. On the last day, the great day of that festival, the priest would circle around the altar at the temple with freshly drawn water, and he presented it as a libation, a liquid offering for God. And it is into that scene with the water flowing that Jesus invited all those who are thirsty for God's presence to come to him and to drink. Because, as he said, out of his belly flow rivers of living water. You see, the one who drinks deeply of the Spirit becomes a source from which the Spirit flows out to others. Jesus drank deeply of his relationship with God, and through their relationship, Jesus then offered this fount to his followers. Once you are in relationship with holy presence, you don't want to hoard that generous gift. You would never keep it to yourself or stop the flow. Water that doesn't flow out from the source becomes stagnant and stinky. That is not unlike those faith traditions that imagine God is exclusively theirs. There are folks who believe that God only belongs to certain people. People like themselves, people who believe what they believe and confess what they confess, as if God, like water, has become a commodity for us to sell, and we hold the only stock options. We will sell those options, of course, but only to the members of our own like-minded faith community. We can be certain of this truth. Like the gleaming generosity of water itself, intrinsic to the generosity of God, the water of life is for all people. We cannot hoard what flows out from itself without restraint. The presence of God is eternal and everywhere, pouring forth and rushing on like a great river pushing out to the sea. Creation must have water to regenerate life and flourish, and humanity must have this eternal spring of holy presence to regenerate the soul and grow the spirit. And because we need this living water, this life-giving water so desperately, God offers it freely without condition. I spread my hands out to you. My soul thirsts for you like a parched land. If you knew the generosity of God, you would ask me, and I would give you living water. Let anyone who is thirsty come to me, and let the one who believes in me drink. Maybe in some way I am remembering now what I thought I had forgotten. Perhaps the thing I saw back in July that made me write down the words living water in my calendar. Maybe that was shown to me through the long months we endured without rain. Maybe the drought, which was so visible everywhere we looked, showed me the soul, that thirst for the generous, gifting God who sustains all life. Or perhaps in those scorching months, the thing I heard was the land crying out for water as our own souls cry out, like Jesus from the cross, I thirst. I thirst. God, fill me with your soul-quenching presence because I thirst for you. Or maybe the thing I thought of was the image of a well, deep and crystal clear, bubbling over and rushing out to water the arid land, like the presence of God rushing out to saturate the arid places of our hearts. Note to self, living water. What is the thing that you see? What is the thing that you hear? What is the thing that you are thinking of? What is the thing that you will remember?